Hello, and welcome to Mystic Dog Mama, the podcast for soul led dog mamas, where you'll discover how to best nourish your dog and yourself, mind, body, and soul. I'm your host, Dr. Alexia Meller. Welcome back to our regular listeners. It's lovely having you here with us again. And if you're new here, welcome. If this is your first time joining us for a Fetch First Friday episode of the Mystic Dog Mama podcast, the first Friday of every month, I sit down with Stacey Renphrey, a fellow holistic canine nutrition consultant and my co-founder of Learn F.E.T.C.H, to talk about a topic affecting our dogs through our Fetch lens. Fetch is our signature framework that encompasses what we see as the 5 pillars of optimal health for our dogs, and ultimately for ourselves. And we teach you guys how to use it to help you make empowered decisions when it comes to your dog's health. Fetch stands for fresh food, energetics, targeted approaches, curiosity, and holistic health. This month, we wanted to do something a little bit different to really show you what Fetch looks like in action. So in this episode, we're talking about Jess, a 13-year-old Rottweiler rescue who lives with arthritis and some ongoing gut issues. Her amazing guardian, Sarah, is a wonderful member of our Learn F.E.T.C.H community, and she very kindly volunteered Jess as a guinea pig so we can show you how we, as holistic canine nutrition consultants, start to look at a dog in order to find maybe some missing pieces or simply to look for some potential tweaks that the guardian might want to consider. Jess has had a beautiful full life, and like many older dogs, her body's asking for a little bit more support right now. We thought it would be helpful to walk you through her care using the F.E.T.C.H framework to see how some small, intentional tweaks across food, environment, and rhythm can make a real difference in a dog's comfort and overall well-being. We'll look at what Jess is currently eating, talk about ways to warm and nourish her as we move into the colder months, explore some targeted supports for her joints and digestion, and reflect on how Sarah's already taking a truly holistic approach, one that honors both the science and the soul of care. Our hope is that this gives you a clearer picture of how Fetch comes to life, how it's not about doing everything, but about noticing, adjusting, and working with your dog's unique needs and season of life. We invite you to see your dog as a whole being, not a list of symptoms to be fixed. And just as a reminder and a disclaimer, this is not a complete consultation and we have not seen Jess. We're taking the information that her guardian, Sarah, provided. We always encourage you to speak with your holistic veterinarian when making any changes to your dog's diet. Okay, on that note, let's dive in and meet Jess. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Fetch First Friday on the Mystic Dog Mama podcast.
Woo! And I'm blending into the wall. I've disappeared.
A true wallflower.
Exactly. Very clever. Very clever.
Well, today we're doing something a little bit different for this month's episode because we were having some conversations in our Facebook group, our free Facebook group. So we're encouraging you to come on, join that, Fetch First Light, where we were talking to members about what might be helpful to them in terms of how to actually apply the Fetch framework to their dogs. And so we actually asked for volunteers to put their dogs forward, and we said that we would take a look at what people are currently doing and give our 2 cents as 2 holistic canine nutrition consultants using the Fetch framework. We just want to kind of reiterate as well, like as a little disclaimer, we have not seen these dogs. This is not a clinical kind of engagement. It's not an official consultation. We're just going off of what the guardians have presented and giving it a bit of a general overview. But our hope is that it will help you to better use the Fetch framework for your own dog so you can see how it's being put in practice and how we're looking at things that clients give to us, where we kind of start to kind of put the puzzle pieces together, unpick what might be going on, and give some different suggestions that the guardian might want to consider doing moving forward.
Yeah, and I think with this one in particular as well, it's lots of asking the why we're giving something, like what is the actual purpose of giving something. And this particular case, I have so much empathy for her because I've been there, and to a certain degree, still am with Ted and figuring out this new kind of way of being with him with the joint issues and getting older. But I've got the confidence to make those decisions now, but I didn't have before. So I really feel for this guardian, and the kind of, I can see exactly why they're trying to do all those things, and they've got the dog at the center of this plan and these ideas, and that, this is great and this is great, and they've seen the adverts and they've been heard this and they've seen that, and they all spout the silver bullet, and this is going to be the miracle thing. This is good, and I get it, and I just really feel for her. I really do.
And I think I agree. I think this is where I was with Lucky and felt really unsure about what to do. And I think most of our clients are like this. I think
Yeah.
most of our listeners are like this. It's a confusing thing. So one of the things that we're hoping to do is sort of dispel some of that confusion and some of the fear as well around feeding your dog a fresh diet by giving you a little bit more of a background of how to use the Fetch framework to confidently make some better decisions and to evaluate. And I think we want to reiterate a couple of things. One, there is no one right way to do this. There is no one right, perfect thing. So we want to kind of help you get over that fear of getting it wrong. And even if we're suggesting something, it's just our suggestions,
Yeah.
right? So you always want to kind of evaluate, is this correct for my dog? Talk to your veterinarian, talk to your other holistic practitioners, whatever makes you feel better. Make sure you're getting that kind of backing from them and you feel good about the decisions that you're making. But it's also, I think, helpful for us to remind people who may not be familiar with what the Fetch framework is. This was a framework that Stacey and I came up with as a result of seeing so many sick dogs, so many guardians struggling with exactly these same kinds of questions and issues of like, my dog isn't doing well for these different reasons. They're itchy, they've got skin problems, they've got gut problems. They're getting older. I'm concerned about joints. How do I make the best decisions? And we started to look at what we were doing in practice. What were the things that we were actually looking at when we were evaluating? And could we distill this into a simple, easy, and replicable framework for you to be able to use so you don't need to come to somebody like us for a therapeutic support? So these are the pillars, the kind of 5 pillars that we see for optimal health for our dogs and ultimately for ourselves too. You can fetch yourself. But
Love that.
but it's true, right? We say
But
learn.
absolutely, yeah.
It's the
I'd
same
probably
thing.
be needing to do a little bit more fetching on myself right now.
Fair enough. Me too. But F starts or stands for fresh food. So we are advocates for fresh, meaning raw or gently cooked, and adding as much fresh into the diet. So if you are feeding kibble, what fresh food can you be adding in? If you want to feed raw or if you want to do gently cooked, those are all fabulous options, whatever works for you, but also more specifically, what works for your dog,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And and then the E follows on for that. So that it builds the next layer of things. E stands for energetics, and we are really big fans. We're not just to, as a disclaimer as well, not we are not professionally trained in traditional Chinese veterinary medicine, but we read a heck of a lot about this and apply it and look at the philosophy of health and life that it promotes, which is everything being in balance and harmony and the body constantly trying to find homeostasis and working with the particular patterns of that individual, right?
Seasons and how they all kind of interlink with each other, and yeah, that's the foundations for the energetics part, and it's such a beautiful thing to build on top of, because once you kind of looked at the food, then you can really tailor the food based on the energetics, and that's why it works so well.
Exactly. And then T, targeted approaches. I
Yeah.
think, as we'll get into this particular case, this is what we see all the time. People with supplement graveyards. I've tried everything and nothing's worked. And part of the issue is because, like Stacey was saying, we are sold this idea of like the latest and greatest superfood, the latest and greatest supplement, the latest and greatest whatever. Like we should be fasting our dogs. No, we should be feeding them once a day. No, we should be feeding them multiple times. All of this stuff. It's
Cut
like,
your broccoli and feed 20 blueberries every day, and the thing is as well, because the cookies on your search profile will always pick up on that, and then your Facebook feed or your Instagram or whatever other social media platforms are available, they will be flooded with adverts to fit that, because that's just the way the tech is now, right? And then you'll be like, oh, that one looks amazing, and then you read the reviews and you're like, oh, I'm going to give that one a go. So I totally get it. Like
yeah.
I see it all the time now.
Yeah.
with stuff that I'm looking for Ted, and then all of a sudden it floods.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So when we talk about targeted approaches, this is about helping you to make better decisions about what it is that you're going to take as your next best step and how do you understand whether or not that is beneficial for your dog. And then that leads into C for curiosity, which is ultimately our favorite letter of the alphabet, of the fetch alphabet. But it's asking different questions. And one of the things that Stacey and I are, well, we're both massive fans of kind of thinking outside of the box and asking different questions. But I think what we've seen time and time again in terms of how we found success with clients, it's by asking a question that doesn't seem to make sense at first. Or picking up on the little kind of details. Like, so we might ask you something to elicit different information that you might not think is important at first, but that it's actually that stuff that clues us into different patterns that might be going on for the dog or things that seem disconnected. That kind of a thing that helps to paint a bigger picture and give us as consultants more information for how we can guide and again target how we're going to be supporting you.
And it's also where kind of tracking is really, really important as well, because the more information you can give us, and even though you might not see that initially, and it might not even be us, but for you initially, you might not see those patterns. But once you've started to track for 3 weeks, you'll be like, oh, that always happens then. And then that happens there. And then that gives you more clues so you can get more targeted. And then you can kind of go back a step to actually target more specifically for what you're picking up on the tracking. And it's game changer.
It is
Absolute
ga-
game changer.
It is because most people who come to us are just completely overwhelmed and they don't know what to do. And
Yeah.
so this we have found is the kind of process for helping you know what your next best
Yeah.
step is for your dog, because every dog is an individual. You're not coming up now, Lucky. I'm sorry. He's back trying to join trying
He's
to
like, I'm
join in.
in.
He's God. But the H to kind of round it out is holistic health. And what we mean by that is taking a truly holistic approach, looking at the dog as a whole body, whole ecosystem within your ecosystem of your household, within the kind of wider ecosystem, all of that sort of stuff. So looking at things like what floor cleaners are you using, all the way to like, is there a new baby in the house and there's a lot of stress going on? Have you just started a new job? All of those kinds of things. And also because we're on Mystic Dog Mama here, some of the more spiritual questions that get raised too of what is my dog showing me and mirroring me and how am I feeling about the health condition that's going on and what is that bringing up that might be an invitation for me to look at and to heal. So it's pulling all of that together to give you actionable steps that you can be taking to better support your dog's overall health and well-being and yours too.
Absolutely. But I think if we go back to the beginning, particularly before we start talking about this case about what a dog actually needs, so it kind of goes back to that whole fresh food idea. And like we said, we're proponents for either raw or lightly cooked. Um, I really like lightly cooked initially for a lot of dogs because I think from a digestion point of view and a getting them settled can be a really, really lovely way to do it. But essentially, we're building it on a 80% muscle meat, 10% offal, so that 10% is split into 5% liver and then 5% other secreting organ, which can be liver, not liver, sorry, kidney, pancreas, spleen, all lovely additional secreting organs, and then 10% bone content. That's where a lot of people fall over, but we can help you with that. The 10% bone bit it can be a little bit tricky, but it's actually really easy once you kind of get into the rhythm with your dog and seeing how their body responds to the bone that you're giving them, because I think that's really important. But that's just the base. That's not going to be a complete, regardless of what some 80-10-10 raw meats will say on the label. That's not a complete. It's not going to give them everything they need. It's low in omega-3s, zinc, magnesium, manganese,
Vitamin
vitamin
D,
D, yeah,
vitamin E.
vitamin E, yeah. So then our premise is how do we fill those gaps through whole food sources within the diet and be aware that we're giving them to them. So that's always where we're thinking, how do we fill those potential gaps with whole fresh foods? And
Exactly.
potentially some supplements as well. But that's when we get targeted and we know why we're giving them, because I think that's where people get so overwhelmed. He's definitely joining in tonight, isn't it?
Sorry.
Because you're talking about food, I've got to be involved, right?
Exactly, exactly.
Especially cooked food. I love cooked food.
He does. He does love cooked food. And yes, so that's also how we are evaluating commercial foods, as well as helping people to put together individual, hold on a
No, he's caught
second.
up in the wires.
If you're going to be doing a DIY, this is what we're evaluating everything against. So that's the kind of standard. And we thought it was good to sort of reiterate that so that as you're trying to decide about feeding your dog, what to look for on a label, what to make sure is included, that should be the starting point
Yeah.
for everyone. So that's what we're going to start with when we're evaluating this case too. It might be easier if we just start diving into that and
Yeah.
show how we're thinking about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, to give people a bit of a background, our lovely volunteer, Sarah, thank you so much for volunteering.
Thank
Jess, her
you.
13-year-old Rottie, she's so beautiful. Um, Sarah is doing an incredible job.
Absolutely.
She is one of those people that has her dog at the center of everything. Like she's absolutely trying to do the best that she can for her dog. And has admitted to me she doesn't necessarily know what the right thing is to do. And I think that's what most people actually feel. Where do I even start? How do I try to evaluate this? And so you start adding in different things, hoping that you're covering bases.
Yeah.
So, as a bit of a background, I asked Sarah to share some information with us about what she's currently feeding
Mhm.
Jess, including supplements, including treats, all of that kind of stuff. Jess also suffers from osteoarthritis. And so she's on medication for that. So I asked about different medications. Sarah has taken a proactive approach to doing things like massage, which has really, really improved Jess's quality of life. And she fully believes that's the reason that she's still here and happy and healthy at 13 for a Rottie, which is
That's
incredible.
incredible. Yeah. Yeah.
And she's thinking about things like ramps for Jess to get in and out of the car and onto sofas and all that. So she is taking a multimodal
Yeah.
approach to how she's supporting health. Diet is one part of it, but that fits into the H component
Yeah.
of Fetch, of building all of those pieces together. So we're evaluating this based off of the information that she
Yeah.
shared with us. So
Okay.
to kind of start off, should we let's talk about the different food that she
Yeah.
mentioned to us first. Do you want to
Yeah, so
start off with
at the
that?
moment she's on a cook diet. So Sarah's cooking predominantly pork, beef, turkey, veal, and white fish. And she adds vegetables to that mix. I'm just reading it through. Yeah, that's what she's having at the moment. And then she's also being fed alongside that um, Fidelis, which is a cooked food brand. It's a complementary food. It's not a complete, but it has got some other ingredients in it. And she's feeding pork, beef, and turkey. Um, that's it for those ones, isn't it? But then there's lots of kind of like little questions for us that come off of the back of that. Um, we both started doodling, putting
Yeah,
loads of notes together because we can't help ourselves. Once
I
we
know.
start, it just goes.
I know.
Um, I think the kind of questions that I'd have, I mean, it's a great selections of proteins. Um, and I would just want to be checking that they're all under 10% fat if they're being cooked, because obviously you can get much higher fat contents from the supermarket and the butchers. So it's always really important to make sure if you're cooking, it's always 10% fat and under. Most I've managed to be able to get all of those proteins at 5 to 10% quite comfortably. So that would just be one thing I'd be thinking about, because obviously if we're cooking too much fat, we could be triggering tummy issues and pancreatitis, those types of things, or just more inflammation. So we want to be mindful of that. I'd also be curious about what veg is being added. And she'd also mentioned as well about bone, hadn't she? That when she has bone, she gets really constipated and has the white chalk, the typical white chalky poos. And from speaking to friends with Rotties and kind of people within the community, that's really common, that they really struggle with bone content. So it's how we could adapt the meal and the food, sorry, with potentially some bone meal instead, and getting some bone meal in there, because that's going to give our calcium and our phosphorus in there, um, to support joints and all those other needs that the body has for calcium and phosphorus. So those are the questions that I'd be asking about that part of the cooked diet. So I don't know
Mhm.
whether you've got any other
Yeah, and
ponderings on that bit.
yeah, because Sarah had said as well that so she cooks veggies separately and she also adds baby pouches. So I'm
Oh
assuming,
yes,
right,
yeah.
which are often high in kind of starchy, sugary kind of veggies. And just as a reminder, dogs don't actually have a biological need for carbohydrates. They don't process them in the same way that we do. And we actually see a lot of dogs with skin issues and gut issues that are fed high amounts of things like sweet potato, carrots, potatoes, all that kind of stuff. So they're just things to kind of be cautious of again, what specific veggies are you adding in there? I would also say regarding the bone stuff, because she mentioned that she does not add bone or bone meal
Mm,
to Jess's diet in her kind of home cooked thing because she doesn't know how much to put in. And that's
yeah,
a massively common question is so how do I do that? It's dependent upon so it will depend on the product and it
mm,
depends on its the weight of the dog. But we also, so again, even going back to the 80-10-10 in terms of like 10% bone, that's a guideline. And you
yeah,
always want to adjust things according to your dog. So some dogs need more, some dogs need less. So in terms of actually adding in a bone meal supplement at the end, or you can actually do it in the cooking process. I usually recommend doing it at the end and mix it all together. But you just follow the directions for the dog's weight on the actual product.
yeah,
If you're in the US, it's often recommended using Now brand bone meal, which is a human grade bone meal. And again, you would just sort of calculate that according to the amount of meat that you were putting into the recipe. And then you sort of figure that out according to the weight of your dog in terms of how you're feeding stuff. It sounds a little complicated. It's not
yeah.
actually once you get into it, but that is an option. Another option, or something else that's kind of triggered in my thinking too, if a dog is having really bad issues with digesting bone, and like Sarah also mentioned to us that she has nausea, lip
Mm,
licking, she's got some tummy issues, suspected IBD, which is inflammatory bowel disease. That would signal to me as well that there needs to be some gut support. So actually, once you get the gut in a bit of a better place, the bone might not be as much of an issue, right? So it's a bit of a chicken and egg kind of thing
yeah,
when it comes
and
to
a
that.
functional hydration thing as well sometimes as well because there's just not enough kind of there's not enough going in, and that's why bone broth can be so brilliant in those situations.
Yeah. Yeah. So overall, from that stuff, I think yes, a great variety of proteins and different sources. The only thing that I would raise about the Fidelis stuff, and this is partly because I did when I first came back over to the UK, I was feeding Lucky Fidelis, and he did really enjoy it, and it is a great product. But again, it's complementary, which means that it doesn't have everything that a dog needs. So it can be added as like a topper or an occasional thing, but you're going to want to make sure that you're rounding out other things because it doesn't have everything. It also is fairly high in starchy, carby foods. Lucky didn't do as well with that.
Yeah,
And so again, being cautious of it's 7% sweet potatoes, 7% carrot, 6% peas. So that's 21% already of kind of starches, 4% apples, 25% starches. So
it's
you're
high.
it's
Yeah.
high. It's high. So I personally would look at reducing, and one way you could reduce is by adding in more meat, for example, and more
Mhm.
offal, like sort of sway the balance that way. But that would be something that I would be looking at in terms of if you have an IBD situation or you have other kind of irritations of the gut, looking at that high amount of starchy carbs would be something I would look
Yeah,
at pulling
to
out.
reduce the inflammation and kind of help support a more diverse microbiome and yeah, reduce the inflammation.
Yeah.
I think what I'm just looking at all my notes as well. What else did I said? Yeah, I think you'd cut. Yeah, I just did a lot of root veg, and there is offal in the beef one, so it was good that she was adding some offal in from that perspective with that beef one. But that was 20% offal, so it might have been too much. So that could have been too potentially too rich, and it doesn't declare the actual offal, and that so it may not be. Quite often in those they'll use heart and lung as the offal, and that's a muscle meat. It's not actually a secreting organ. So we have to be a little bit mindful of that, the reason that they're kind of nature's vitamins, because that's where they're powerhouses of nutrients in the secreting organs. So that's why they're so important. And for vitamin D and A, and
Hmm.
yeah, we
Yep.
love them.
Exactly. Exactly. But it's a decent base to start from. The other thing that we pointed out in our notes as well is that the calcium source in the Fidelis is from seaweed.
Hmm.
And that can be great, but when we look at what is the kind of perfect balance for calcium and phosphorus, it's bone. And if you've got a dog with arthritis issues, I would always lean towards bone. So whether that be bone meal or that be feeding raw meaty bones, and even with a cooked diet, you can do a hybrid version of it. So like that's what I do for Lucky, and
What
I know
I'm
that's
doing now.
what you're
Yeah.
doing now for Ted is that I'll cook his main base and his veggies, but then I feed him a raw meaty bone as his calcium source and as his bone. So you can start to combine. And how I monitor it is I'm not, some people will try to really calculate exactly how much muscle meat and how much bone is within like a chicken wing or whatever. That's just not how I feed Lucky. It's really not. I'm way more lax than that. I look at his poos.
Yeah.
And, if he's had a carcass, for example, he loves, like every now and again, I can get a hold of, say, a duck carcass, which is like his favorite thing. And I know he's probably going to be a little bit bunged up because he's going to eat more than he should do because he loves it. And it's not that he's totally bunged up, but it's a little stiffer than than it normally is. And then the
Yeah.
next meal or the next day I don't give him bone,
Yeah.
right? So it's kind of finding the balance that works for you and your dog.
Yeah, because Ted can tolerate a little bit more. He's probably more than 15%, maybe even a little bit more. So I just vary his bones, and he just has one every day after we get back from a walk. That's become our routine for so long now. But he has duck wings, duck necks, turkey necks. It's
Hmm.
just a variety of bony components when we get back from a walk. And
Yep.
like you say, I just go by his poo. Sometimes I'll be like, oh, that's a little bit soft. You need an extra bone, or that's a little bit firm. Oh, you'll only get a duck neck. You won't get the wing as well. So it's getting to know your dog and and then feeling comfortable that that's okay.
Yeah,
Like you can
exactly.
just go by eye. It's all right. Because
Exactly.
that's the body telling you you've got it right. Like that's having that confidence is so important.
It
But
really
I
is.
understand how hard it can be to get there, 100%.
Yep. The other thing that we were noticing about the Fidelis stuff is that it has linseed oil, which is a great source of omega-3s, yes, but not the omega-3s that dogs really benefit from. They can't convert the ALA omega-3s into what we call EPA and DHA. Those are your marine sources. So that's where things like fish oil, krill oil, algae oil are often recommended over the linseed, which is flaxseed. And also, it has salmon oil, which can be pro-inflammatory. And for a dog that is already inflamed from arthritis, that's something that I would look at and do an algae oil instead,
Absolutely.
personally. Anything else on the Fidelis stuff?
I don't think so. I mean, there was a few little herbs and bits in there that were quite nice, like the dandelion and the
Yeah,
rosemary and a few other bits. So as a every now and then, or as a topper, then yeah, they're
yeah,
great, and they are great. But
yeah,
if we can focus more on getting the initial cooked bit right, and getting veggies that are more suited to her. And because I think we'd spoken about blitzing them up as well, hadn't we? Because I think Sarah had said that she spits them out, so that's why the baby puree works so well. But you could food processor it and blend it, so it just becomes kind of like the puree itself almost,
yeah,
doesn't it? And you could pop it into the mix that you're
yeah.
cooking, and
The,
choose veggies that aren't the starchy ones, and
yeah,
your courgettes and your broccoli and your radishes and mushrooms, and that's Ted's
exactly.
favorite routine at the moment. That's his little combo at the moment.
Exactly. But there's also an element of like self-selection that you can do.
Yeah, and that.
And I remember I had a conversation with Dr. Carol Hughes from Biome for Pets about the microbiome. And I had mentioned to her about how the night before that I did the interview that I had had broccoli mixed into Lucky's dinner, and he picked it all out to not eat it. He didn't want, and normally he quite likes it. And she said, well, that will be because he knew that he had the right balance. And actually, there was some compound within broccoli that would have set the balance off,
So
disrupted it. Yeah, well, I mean, well, he would like to think that he's that clever.
bad.
It's probably just played a game with me, to be
Yeah,
honest.
100%. He's just like, no, not tonight. Mexican
Exactly.
dictator's back.
Exactly. Exactly. But there's also that element too that she
Yeah,
might not like the veggies because her microbiome is off
yeah,
and not feeling great. So you could try doing some self-selection things, but also she might be okay with veggies once you do some gut healing things, right?
yeah. And
It's
this
not
is
black
where,
and
and
white.
again, you could do some tracking with veggies and just try one at a time and see which ones she likes and which ones she does well with and which ones she doesn't like. And
Yeah,
again, it could be seasonal as well. There could be a seasonal
absolutely.
thing.
Yeah.
So it, so
There's some
yeah, there's
there's
so much. You could
there's
go
so
down
much.
so many rabbit holes.
As we do, as we do. But I wanted to move on to how Sarah had mentioned that she's adding in kefir and goat's yogurt, and we're assuming that is for microbiome support because we're told that they are great for dogs, and they can be, but some dogs don't tolerate dairy very well, for example, and there's also, if there's a bigger issue with the gut microbiome, which it sounds like there actually
Yeah,
is based off of all this information, those microbes that are in the kefir and the yogurt aren't necessarily, one, the right ones
yeah,
to help support the issue that she's got. And they might not actually survive all the way down the digestive tract. They might not survive the stomach acidity, get through the small intestine and get into the large intestine
yeah,
where we want them in order to do the good. So I think there would be other ways to consider
absolutely.
supporting the gut microbiome, including prebiotics,
Yeah,
that kind
yeah,
of thing, and
100%.
potentially probiotics as well. And we can talk about that as we
Yeah.
kind of go further down.
She's adding bone broth, which is fantastic. From what the only question I had was whether it was because some people will add it dry because you can get the powdered pouches now in the tubs, which are all fantastic, but some people will put it on dry, which I just think for me it should be a liquid because I think we're using it for functional hydration. So I always use it as a liquid. That's how my brain works in the fact that, we're looking for
Hmm.
hydration because it's got so many goodies in it to support the microbiome. Is it going to do that in a powdered form? To me, it doesn't feel like it would. So I don't, there's no scientific research behind that. That's just an intuitive feel into what it would be because it's meant to be jelly and wobble and do all of those things. So I don't know how you feel about bone broth being dry.
I think I have done it dry and then added little bits of water to kind of make it more of a liquid for Lucky. Some people say don't add it to the food, feed it separately and all that kind of. Again, it depends on your dog. He
Dog.
does much better when I make his food a little bit mushier
Yeah.
with it. But the thing that I do like about commercial bone broths as well is it, the availability of it, right? Like the ease of it. Because
Absolutely.
I personally, there is nothing I love more other than watching him eat a raw meaty bone. Nothing I love more than it's so satisfying to make a bone broth yourself. And then Stacey and I will send videos of when
When it's
we'll get the
set.
wobble. Oh, I had one today. I didn't get to video it. I should have done, but I did one today and I was like, chef's kiss. This is
Yeah.
absolutely
The
beautiful.
satisfaction is
Oh,
just, and then when it goes in the jar and it stays warm, oh, just
oh,
we're so
love
sad.
it. I know. I just love it. I just love it. But the thing that's fantastic about bone broth for Jess is so we talked about functional hydration, absolutely. It also is packed full of gut supporting amino acids, all kinds of goodies. And it's also fantastic for joints,
Yeah,
right?
you
So
can dry it in your glucosamine, all of those lovely, lovely things. 'Cause it's from joints, so it just feeds the
exactly.
joints, and yeah,
Yep.
it's
And from an energetics perspective, if we're going back to TCM, like feeds like. If you want to
yeah,
build the joints, feed things from joints. So that's a beautiful, beautiful thing to be adding in. I definitely support that. The wild omega oil, this is a fish oil, I believe,
yeah.
for
The question I'd had was just be looking at what were the source. Was it a fish oil or was it an algae oil? Because again, if it's a salmon oil based one, it could potentially be. more pro-inflammatory? Is it more algae based or krill or one of those other ones that are other marine sources? So
Mhm.
I would be looking at that. And again, that's just asking different questions of the label, isn't it? And just getting curious about
Yeah.
what's on the label. Yeah.
Yeah. And if you are going to buy anything with salmon, there are a couple of things to consider. One, you always want wild caught. Don't get farmed salmon because it's pumped full of antibiotics and dyes and all that kind
And
of stuff,
soy and also,
all
yeah.
sorts of stuff. So you always want to go for wild caught. I also always recommend cooking. If you're going to get like fresh salmon, don't serve it raw. Cook it because of the risk of parasites, especially if it's coming from the Pacific. You want to be cautious with that. So just a couple of heads up. Salmon isn't horrible, but the thing is, it's higher up on the food chain as well. So there's more toxins as a result of it. And like we're saying, it's a hot protein from a TCM perspective,
Yeah.
so it can trigger inflammation, particularly for warmer dogs. So just something to consider. And again, it's not that any of these things are bad. We're just building a picture for things you can consider adding, shifting, etc., in order to see if how that might impact the dog.
Yeah. Oh, she said she's adding eggs, which are amazing just because
Yes.
they're an absolute powerhouse. So you can rotate eggs. There's quail, duck, chicken. Yeah, I use Ted loves a quail egg. They are
Yep.
fantastic.
Yep.
And they're so nutrient dense, the quail eggs, because they're so diddy. They're really nutrient dense.
Exactly. And we consider that an essential addition to foods.
Yeah.
It's not an optional thing. So having that regularly in the diet. The other thing that might be helpful for a dog like Jess is considering the role of the eggshell membrane,
Yeah.
because that is a fantastic source of joint support. And in fact, there have been a lot of studies done on both humans and dogs on the impact of the eggshell membrane on both reducing pain in osteoarthritis and also in reducing inflammation. And there's been a positive result from that.
Because
You,
they're trying to synthesize it at the moment, aren't they, to make supplements to
yeah,
mimic what that's doing because it
e-
is so effective. Yeah.
exactly. You can buy eggshell membrane as like a dried supplement if you want. But what I tend to do is like when I've cracked eggs, I just peel that stuff off and drop it into Lucky's bowl. You can
Yeah.
feed it raw, you can feed it dried out. It doesn't matter, but that's a nice little functional food for joint issues. She's feeding sprats, which
Yeah.
is fantastic, another source of marine, not only omega-3s, but also vitamin D, which a lot of fresh food diets are low in. And especially as we're going into the winter, we want to be considering that as all of us become in the northern hemisphere vitamin D
Old and wet.
deficient. Yeah. But we were talking about before as well, the relationship with vitamin D and bones. I think that's
Yeah.
often a missed.
Yeah, because of the way it works with calcium, and then again, you're thinking about the calcium source going in and a vitamin D source so that they can work together to support the joints. So it's just thinking again about how all these parts of the menu support the body
Yeah.
and looking at but basing it on that 80-10-10 idea, and then how do you fill those other gaps so that you have got that like matrix of foodies going in.
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly. She's also listed that she gives Jess coconut oil. I think that's because it's often there's a lot of talk around coconut oil being good for like skin and joints and all of that kind of stuff. Jury's out.
Yeah.
Jury's out on that.
When I first joined the holistic world back in 2016 with Shadow, coconut oil was all the rage, everything. And I remember making him coconut oil and blueberry treats, and it was the rage. Everybody was doing it. Um, yeah, there's lots of articles on Dogs Naturally, which is a great resource. And it's they're the articles that I tend to send to clients if I'm working with them, if they've been using it, just to give them some information. It's just because of the um oh, what is it? It's the acids, isn't it? And
Lauric
the
acid.
yeah, and just how it's just not as bioavailable as other fats for the body, and it's not like a normal fat that they would have had access to. So from a biological perspective, is it a good fit? it's
Hmm.
it's weighing up that.
It's
But for the
great.
skin, it's great.
I was gonna say it's great for as like a flea repellent as well to put
Yeah.
on the
And
dog and toothpaste.
Ted had some harvest mites recently, late September, early October. He had some harvest mites, like little orange clusters on his muzzle. Coconut oil, 2 days, they're gone.
Yeah,
Amazing. But that's the acids, that's that getting into. So
exactly.
again, when you think about it like that, what's it doing to that? What could it potentially be doing in the gut? That's where I kind of think potentially it's not so great
Potentially.
internally. Yeah.
And it does depend on the dog, but again, I would be asking, why are you adding it in?
Yeah.
Because especially Sarah mentioned that she tries to keep things low fat, but Jess has a little bit of an issue around fat. So I would be looking at why something is being added
Yeah.
in, and is that actually the best form for what you're trying to do? Same
Absolutely.
thing with the Neil plaque that she's adding in, which is for dental health. It has flaxseed, some seaweeds, alfalfa, and marjoram, and those are all great things, and they're great for the gut as well. But I think we also have to be kind of cognizant of the fact that a lot of these dental products that have seaweed in them are often high in iodine. So if you are going to be using them, you want to make sure that you don't have an iodine source in the rest of the recipe that you're doing, because you can have too much iodine, and too much iodine is not good for the thyroid. So again, just looking at things in combination. So it might be that you're doing the DIY cooked diet and using the Neil plaque as your iodine
Yeah.
source. And that's great. So it's two birds, one stone, right? But I think that the Fidelis has some iodine. Was I right in that? I can't
Yeah, I think
remember.
it did. It had seaweed meal, didn't it? So it will
Yeah.
have
So it's
some
just being,
iodine,
yeah.
but yeah.
Yeah. So it's just being cautious around that. Um, and then she's adding in Reaflex, which you love as well. You used to have Ted on it,
I
right?
did use this for Ted, but I had chosen the one that had got the greenlet mussel in it, and greenlet mussel does not agree with Ted. So that's the one that you were using for
Yep.
Lucky, and he responded really, really well with it, didn't he?
Hmm.
But for Ted, the GLM, it's a no-go. But the some of the questions I had was, has is it being tracked? For when she's having some of these tummy flare-ups, because the chondroitin source in there is avian derived. So if there's a chicken potential intolerance in there, it's just another question to ask about the ingredients that are in there. Um, and I think you would put in there about it has got some vitamin E in there, but it's from a preservation perspective. But then you could add in sunflower seeds or wheat germ oil as a kind of more direct source of vitamin E going into like a more bioavailable. Sorry, that's the better way of saying it.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep, exactly. And the Reaflex, which is, if we didn't say, is for joint health, has manganese in it. So that is fantastic. So you might not necessarily then need the pumpkin seeds or the blue mussels that we had mentioned before for a manganese source. So it's kind of looking at where is it coming from, making sure
yeah,
that you have a source of it in the overall diet, is kind of what we look at. Psyllium husk, she's got in there. We're assuming for digestive
yeah,
support because that is for fiber, but that can be great. And that certainly for therapeutic cases for a short period, that can be fantastic. But if you're adding in fibrous vegetables, like say your dark leafy greens, for example, she might not need it.
yeah.
So again, it's kind of trial and error, isn't it? And monitor the poos, because sometimes, too much fiber isn't a good thing either. So we find our dog's perfect balance for that.
Yeah, the tolerance level for it. And then there was another supplement that was being used to try and support her microbiome, that's sold by quite a well-known influencer, would you say? Is that the best word to say?
Hmm.
Influencer. It's a product of theirs, that has organic chia seeds, organic chamomile, organic marshmallow, and a blend of seaweeds. So again, it's the same questions. We've got some more seaweed going in, but we've got it going in the dental as well. And individually, those ingredients can be lovely, but there's nothing actually specifically in there to support the actual gut microbiome. It's more kind of soothers, I suppose, is a better word for the gut lining, rather than actually supporting the actual gut microbiome and actually targeting with either pre or probiotics. So yeah, I would be hesitant over that one potentially. Again,
Yeah,
but it's tracking to see whether there's the benefits that it's having.
right. Right, exactly. Then we've got hemp oil. And again, these are ALA fats. It is a great fat, but it's understanding why you're adding it in and being cautious that you're not kind of doubling up on things.
Yeah,
Now, also in terms of the conversation around the microbiome, we mentioned that Jess is on different pain medications for her osteoarthritis. So this comes up a lot when we're talking to clients who might be afraid of putting their dogs on pain meds, for example. And I just want to reiterate that we are always proponents of if your dog needs pain medication, you have them on pain medication. This is a quality of life issue, and it's
Yeah.
your duty of care to make sure that they are not in pain. I think people are afraid to give them because they don't want to give pharmaceuticals and they're afraid what is it going to do to the microbiome and all that kind of stuff. We can support the microbiome through that. We can compensate in different ways. So please, if it has been recommended that your dog needs pain medication, don't let that frighten you. There are ways that we can better support and also support detox, for
Yeah.
example.
And I'm navigating that right now because
Exactly.
Ted's on another pain med trial because there are issues, and when he's on the pain meds there is improvement, and he is 10. We have detected this issue with his knee and his hip. I don't want him to be in pain. I want him to enjoy spanioling still whilst he
Yeah.
still can. So yeah, it's an adjustment, but I will carry on making adjustments and tweaking his diet and adding some microbiome support in, and just thinking, how can I support him now that he needs
What
these pain meds?
could you maybe talk about that from your perspective of what are some specific changes that you have made to his diet since he's been on the pain meds, and what have you seen as a result?
I've definitely been more aware of getting some veggies in, because he's not when he's on raw during the summer, he's not normally a veggie man. I'm not, if I remember, they go in. But because he's gone on to cooked as well, because now it's got colder, and he does so much better on cooked during the winter and when the colder months. So he's on cooked. I'm choosing different veggies for different reasons. So from a TCM perspective, I'm looking at how I'm supporting the different organ systems as well. So that's just another rabbit hole for me. But so he's getting radishes and some other things that are specific for him. And I am going to, he's literally just going back on the pain med trial today, sorry. And I will be getting some probiotics in. So I'll probably go down the Adored Beast route because they're a really lovely brand, and get some of those in to support his system and his microbiome whilst he's on these meds, because it is a both and, I
Yeah.
want to be able to do both.
Yeah.
I can support his microbiome and he can be more comfortable.
Exactly. And that's where you could also be considering things like one of the things I really love about the Adored Beast probiotics is that they often have humic and fulvic acid in them
Yeah.
as well, which help to bind
Detox.
toxins. So you could look at adding in additional detox support when you're selecting vegetables to put in your dog's food.
Yeah.
Think about things like dandelion greens or
Yeah.
beets, for example, to help with.
That's on the shopping list for his next round,
There
yes.
you go. There you go. Exactly. So it can be simple things like that. And I mean,
Yeah.
even the bone broth, which you do all year round, every day,
Yeah.
but that also helps.
Yeah, because it'll flush stuff through and just take, yeah.
Yeah. So there are ways to kind of target, so don't let that put you off.
Yeah.
I wanted to jump as well because she was very good and mentioned what she gives for treats. She gives fantastic treats, like natural, mostly single ingredient, like beef gullets, fish twists, which is fish skin.
Yeah.
I think fish coins, which is white fish, and then chamomile. The only one that I was a little bit concerned about was the fish treats that have cod, and then it has general minerals
Yeah.
and brewer's yeast. So not, I'm not a fan of brewer's yeast myself. I think a lot of dogs have issues with it. And I
Yeah.
also don't like the generic minerals thing. And I wanted to say that what that generally means is like that's the synthetic vitamin and mineral mixes that are added into like kibble, for example. And if you've listened to the episode that I did with Dr. Katie Woodley on allergies and intolerances, she talks about how she's found that a lot of times when there's persistent issues for dogs, it's actually a response to those synthetic additives. So it might be you've tried different proteins, like you've done the
Mm.
rotation of different foods, and the dog is still presenting with an issue, and it could very well be the synthetic additions that are put in. So I always raise that as a kind of caution, particularly with a dog that has known gut issues and
Yeah.
potential IBD. And I just want to say a quick thing on that. The reason it hasn't been diagnosed as IBD for in Jess's case is because Jess is highly reactive and has real issues with getting to the vet. So Sarah's made the kind of executive decision around, I'm just going to look at how I best support
Yeah.
her gut and not put her
And
through that
minimize
kind
her
of
stress.
and
Yeah.
minimize her stress and trauma. So, but if you can get a diagnosis for something and then you can treat responsibly
Yeah.
according to that particular diagnosis targeted.
I was just reading through everything. I think we've covered a lot. I think the one of the things that we had said about kind of like in closing was about adding digestive enzymes could be really helpful. Did we say that at the beginning? I don't think we did, did we? Did we
I
say?
can't I can't remember.
Apologies if we've
Yeah.
already said that, but digestive enzymes, beautiful,
Yeah.
really, particularly for older dogs as well. I mean, all dogs could benefit, but particularly older dogs, as things start to slow down and the acids change and those types of things happen, digestive enzymes can be fantastic. And there's a couple of really good products on the market now.
Yeah. And when we're talking about digestive enzymes, I want to hear your thoughts on this. I generally prefer the pancreatic
Yeah.
digestive enzymes. You can see products on the market that have bromelain from pineapple and papain from papaya,
Okay.
and those are great. But in terms of when you've got real digestive issues, or you've got an older dog that might be struggling, there might be some pancreas issues in a dog, or even like dogs, like cooler dogs that are fed
Little
cooked
sluggish.
little
Yeah.
sluggish, and they're fed cooked diets, which are great, but they might need a little bit of extra support. It's the pancreatic digestive enzymes that we would look for in a
And
product.
from a like feeds like perspective as well, it's that
Yeah,
whole thing of the
yeah.
pancreas supporting the pancreas and
But
the
that's the other thing, is you could feed pancreas.
that's the other, yeah. I mean, I pancreas is one of the secreting organs that I add into Ted's mix because it's a really easy one to get hold of and it's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. So that's something that we would look at. And also, I don't know if we specifically said this, but in terms of an energetics, or from an energetics perspective, Jess tends towards being cooler, but also dogs tend to go cooler as they get older, right? So you might have you're seeing this with Ted, that being a warm dog, suddenly, lo and behold, channeling his inner Lucky and deciding sunbathing is
I,
great.
yeah, I'm still a little bit dumbfounded by it really, and the fact that he's actually choosing to snuggle next to me, not currently, but there's a blanket and he's actually nestling into it. Like this is a game changer. This is a whole new territory for me. This is not him, but it is a real eye opener for me to see this aging process happen with him and see these changes from this very, very hot dog to now we're coming into these colder months, this shift. Yeah, it's fascinating.
It is.
Absolutely fascinating.
But it's information that you can use to best support him. And so, like, as Sarah could do for Jess as well. So looking at, as we're going into the winter, of those kind of the protein mixes, maybe edge a little bit more to warming proteins, like as the greater balance in that mix,
Yeah.
as an example. And like you had said, like warming up the food, warming up the bone broth, all of those things can really help the overall system.
Yeah,
Um,
it definitely helps Ted because I will warm his up in the pan
mhm.
just to take the edge off of it because if it even if it's cooked out straight out of the fridge for him is
It's
still
too
too
cool.
much,
Yeah.
still too much. So in the pan with some bone broth to make that kind of little gravy and get that going,
Yeah.
then just literally to take the edge off and then it goes on his plate and then he demolishes it. It lasts 2 seconds.
Love it. And also from a TCM perspective, it's never recommended for any dog of any age, of any constitution, to feed food that's straight out of the fridge. You always want to let it kind of come to room temperature. And part of the reason for that is that it stresses the digestive system when you're feeding it cold. It's got to warm the food up first. So if you're seeing any kind of tummy issues and you're feeding food right out of the fridge, that might be the first place to start, is actually let it sit, for half an hour on the counter before you feed it. Or what I tend to do, because I always forget and don't pull things out half an hour before, is I'll warm up the bone broth, or I'll pop the kettle on and then just run some warm water over his food just to bring it to room temperature. So that's also something to consider
Yeah.
with all of that. We did suggest, as we were sort of evaluating like what some next steps could be for Jess, adding in some detox support could be helpful,
Yeah.
especially from, as we were just talking about, from being on pain medication. Adding in some specific gut support products, like a digestive enzyme, or adding in something like a gut soothe, like a Dord Beast gut soothe,
Yeah.
that kind of thing that actually helps to line the stomach. That could help, especially because Sarah mentioned that with about the lip licking, and she ends up giving Jess like a ginger biscuit, like
Biscuit.
a
Yeah.
cookie, to help with the nausea. Ginger is fantastic for nausea. So that it could even be that you add ginger to the bone broth. That could be powdered ginger, or you make the bone broth with ginger, for example, or add a little bit of ginger to the food to help support. And like we were saying, track, is there a particular time of day that she has the nausea? Because from a TCM
Yeah.
perspective, that might be associated with a system.
Yeah.
Or, she might prefer eating later or earlier or whatever. So if you just start to track these things, you become aware of patterns that you might not have seen or there before.
Yeah. And we also suggested potentially making sure that we're getting kind of the upper amounts of zinc into the diet, because at the moment it'll only be coming from a few places, but zinc is so important for skin and gut health. It's a
And
real,
joints.
yeah, such a powerhouse.
Yep.
So pumpkin seeds, oysters. There is also a supplement that you can get that I've been using for Ted recently, and his coat does feel very different.
Yep.
So yeah,
Yep.
it's another one to be, again, for older dogs as well, and just think, as you said, for joints as well, really, really important.
Yep. And this is where if she's struggling with organ, Sarah had mentioned that Jess is struggling with liver. Liver is like a prime source of zinc. So she might be low in it. So looking at how you could add that in. Another trick too, some dogs don't like the texture of organ meat. So it could be that you're pureeing it and mixing it in. There are powders as well, organ powders that you can buy. So that might be another
And there
option.
are some raw food brands that do like an offal mix, and some of them are actually really good with a good ratio of the different types. So it could be that you could add something like that to the beginning of the cooking, like with it when you're actually cooking the food up, that
Hmm.
you're adding that's your 10% or your 100 grams if you're doing 1,000
Yep.
grams. Yeah.
Yep. And another thing from a targeted perspective, it might be helpful to even do like a microbiome
Mhm.
test to see what's going on with the gut. And then you can target the specific
Yeah.
bacteria that need some support. She was asking us who we recommend in terms of companies. We have regularly recommended Biome for Pets here in the UK, and they do international
Yeah.
stuff. Animal Biome is a common company in the US and
Yes.
Canada as well. So what's nice about that, if you're going to do a microbiome test, is it gives you specific information. So you're not just shooting in the dark at, well, should I add this? Should I add that? It will tell you what is actually going on, where the imbalance is, and then specifically how you feed
How
for
to
what,
rebalance.
how to
Yeah.
rebalance it. And it makes the process that much quicker as well. So it's definitely worth doing it. She had also asked for some advice on how to give Jess her pills, her pain medication
Yeah.
that she's like a ninja who can find them and spit them out.
Same as the broccoli.
Yep,
Out.
exactly. But you had a great recommendation
Yeah,
for
I
her.
mean, the pill crusher, like my nan used to have it because she wouldn't take her tablets without pill crushing and then putting on a spoon of jam. Seriously, we're not advocating for jam for Jess, but there's pill crushers. You can get them very, very cheaply online, and literally just crush the tablet, and then you could mix it in with the food. That
Or
could make
bone
life a lot
broth.
easier. Or bone broth, yeah, that could make life a lot easier. I know Ted suggests that it has to be given with food, but to for the tummy lining and stuff.
Hmm.
So, but it could be you could just crush it.
Hmm.
But yeah, you just twist the top and it crushes it into a little powder. So that could be a really helpful way to get the tablets in.
Yep,
And it might even be
exactly.
a little bit more available quicker because, it's already broken down.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And from the H holistic health perspective, we've mentioned that Jess is already taking a multimodal approach to support it, which I just love, like with the ramps and the massage and all of that kind of great stuff.
Beautiful.
And another thing to add in too, well, there are a couple of other things that I wanted to add in. You can even be looking at things like what cleaners are you using? What are you washing bedding with? And all that stuff, because the fragrances, for example, have an effect on the gut microbiome. We don't necessarily recognize those things. Or if you've got skin issues, those are places we might kind of look as a starting point. But I think as well, we were talking about this earlier, off camera, but when you have a dog that has a challenge of any kind, whether that's a health challenge or a behavioral challenge, or you're navigating a new phase in life and all of that, this is a stressful thing for you as the guardian. And it can bring up an awful lot of stuff. And it can make you feel like you're not doing enough. You should have done more. You should have
Shoulda, woulda, coulda.
known, shoulda,
Yeah,
woulda, all of that garbage. And we're speaking from personal experience with this one, like,
100%.
right, like this. So I think it's also important from the H perspective of Fetch that you are building in support for you. So we've talked all about the dog so
Yeah.
far, but it's also recognizing your needs and how are you building in opportunities for breaks for yourself, to connect with yourself, to socialize? Or you do you have practices about like self-acceptance or what, I
Yeah.
mean, whatever, right? Like journaling, it doesn't matter, but like to make sure that you're not forgetting your
You.
end of the lead
Yeah.
as well, because your dog's health journey is completely affected by your own.
And as a very good friend of mine always says, grace over guilt. Like, just give yourself grace over guilt because the guilt will just end up eating you up. But if you can just give you until you know better, you can't do better. And this and the whole Fetch framework is about just you helping to for you to learn to do things differently. And you don't know that until you start doing it. So you've done the
Exactly.
very best you can until you start asking different questions. And it's beautiful. It's all part of the journey, right?
It is, and it's also a constant thing. Like we're
Yeah.
constantly using the fetch framework on our own dogs because they're constantly changing.
Yeah.
So it's not like you come to one. I think this is also the myth in the kind of
Yeah.
Western
Western. Yeah.
perspective to health. I just need that silver bullet, or once I figure it out, once it's fixed, then we're good to go. That is not how life works, and it's not how the body works. It's not how health works, which is why I lean heavily on the philosophy of traditional Chinese medicine because it fully embraces that flow.
Yeah.
And that balance looks different each and every day. And balance is going to look different, like as the dog is going through different seasons, as it's going through different
Yeah.
emotional changes, different life stages, all of that. So if you can kind of get into that perspective of being the observer and recognizing that what worked for you maybe even last week doesn't necessarily work now. Right. And it doesn't mean that you shoulda, woulda, coulda done what you're doing now last week. No, the dog was in a different place.
Yeah.
You were in a different place. Everything was in a different place. So I
And the
think
seasons changed, and
all
there's,
of it.
all of that has happened at the same time as well, and just and uh, giving yourself time to think about that the season changes will be, particularly now as the temperatures are now starting to dip, that that will have an impact potentially on behavior and whether they're eating and what they want to eat and when they want to eat, all of those things. So that's when the tracking comes in really important as well, because this is when you start to see those patterns, whether it be monthly, whether it be quarterly, whether it be you just start to pick up. And the more you get to know your dog, the easier that becomes because you start to pick those things up quicker
Yeah.
and you'll be like, we're here again. This is when this happens. Right. Now I adapt again. And that's why Fetch framework works so well, because you've got that to fall back on each and every time and you can just keep going back to it. What can I tweak this time? Where can I make those adjustments? Because it is ever changing. It's never going to be static. You can't
Hmm.
make it. It just won't be.
No, no, it won't. Is there anything else that you feel we need to add on this one?
No, I don't think so. But yeah, I think Sarah's doing so well, bless her. I think she's, Jess is obviously a very, very loved girl and it's gorgeous. And like I say, I love all the ramps and all the extra support. And that's all the stuff that I'm now gearing myself towards and thinking, and
Yeah.
it's given me a couple of ideas for things for him. So that's the other thing, right? I'm seeing things that, like, oh, that's a great idea. I could potentially think about that. So that's the other thing about being in the community like that. You get to see other people's suggestions and, oh, this is how you're doing. Okay, that's another way. That's another lens to look at it through,
Yeah.
right? So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. And I also want to really like applaud Sarah with this as well because she has done all of this off the back of her own research of just trying to figure things out for her dog. And I just think it's so commendable. It's so amazing. And there are just a few tweaks. There are a few tweaks
yeah,
to consider doing. And again, when we're talking about tracking, it's also try to do one thing at a time. So don't overhaul the entire diet in one go, right? Like you try one little shift and see how the dog does. You
yeah,
monitor their stool, you look at their body condition
yeah.
score, all of that kind of stuff, and just and track. And it doesn't have to take you ages. It's just making little notes and
I just
seeing,
use the notes on my phone and just a
yeah,
quick 20, 10
yeah,
seconds, like doo doo.
exactly. Exactly. So if you want to have your dog reviewed by us in this kind of mini consultation, if you will, a little use of how to use the Fetch framework, come and join our free Facebook group, Fetch First Light, because that is where we are drawing our guinea pigs Guinea pig dogs, guinea dogs.
Guinea dog,
From,
that's a
yeah,
whole
a
new
guinea
breed.
dog. That's where we're drawing them from. So if you want that opportunity, come and join us there. It's free. You can search Fetch First Light on Facebook. I'll also leave a link directly to the group in the show notes. But it's also a space for, we wanted to kind of create it as a bit of a sanctuary that's a bit different than most groups. It's not about what do I give my dog for itching, and then you get 500 million responses and you still feel you feel more overwhelmed. This is about our aim with it is to show you how to start to figure these things out for yourself so that you feel much more empowered, that you know why you're making a particular decision instead of feeling completely overwhelmed by all of the noise that's out there. So we would love to see you in the group.
Absolutely. Yeah. Then you can and advocate for your dog and for you as well.
Exactly. So thank you again to Sarah for putting Jess forward. We're really grateful. We hope this was helpful. If you guys have any questions or you have any comments or you're not quite sure why we made a particular decision or what have you, get in touch or you can leave a comment or get in touch on Instagram at learn.fetch. You can also reach us via our website, learnfetch.com.
Absolutely. And we'll see you in December.
See you in December. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much for joining us for our Fetch in Action episode. We hope you enjoyed it and found it helpful. Would you like us to do some more episodes like this? If so, leave a comment or get in touch on Instagram at learn.fetch and let us know. So, if you've also been craving some support, clarity, and connection for yourself as you care for your dog, I'd love to invite you to join us in Fetch First Light, our free Facebook group for like-hearted guardians. It's a place where holistic dog care finally feels lighter, not heavier, and we teach you to put Fetch in action to support your dog's health. You can search Fetch First Light on Facebook or just click on the link in the show notes. All right, until next time.